students, welcome to MOOC on Human Rights in India. In the last module, we saw the human rights violations faced by children and also the structure, composition and functions of the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. In this module, we will take up a critical appraisal of the way the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has acquitted itself. What are the positive contributions the NCPCR has made, and what are the areas in which NCPCR could have done better. Before we go further, let us briefly recall the functions assigned to the NCPCR in its parent statute. The Commission is expected to review safeguards provided under the Constitution or any laws in force and make recommendations for better implementation from a child rights perspective. The NCPCR is also expected to redress individual complaints of human rights violations faced by children. In addition, the Commission is expected to inspect institutions such as observation homes where children are lodged for purposes of reformation and recommend measures for improvement of conditions at those institutions. In addition, the Commission is expected to conduct research on outstanding issues, important issues relating to protection of the rights of children, and document a series of recommendations emerging out of such research. Finally, the Commission is expected to generate awareness amongst the general public about the human rights of children and the institutional machinery that is available for protection of child rights. So these are a number of functions that have been entrusted to the NCPCR. This commission is also expected to review specific provisions and monitor the implementation of specific provisions in the Right to Education Act and also the protection of children from sexual offences or POCSO Act or the Juvenile Justice Act. So in other words, it has a multifarious role. It walks on many legs. When it tries and builds awareness across the length and breadth of the country, it seeks to generate a consciousness, a national consciousness, a culture of protection of rights of children. And in addition, it conducts research, inquires into individual complaints, and engages in law reform, policy reform, etc. The Commission, since its inception, has been issuing a series of guidelines on important matters relating to the protection of child rights. For instance, on this area of engaging children in television serials, reality shows was one subject matter where the Commission came out with a detailed guidelines. Similarly, regulation of private schools, particularly for children in the age group of 3 to 6 years, was yet another area. I draw your attention to the following graphic where the Commission's guidelines on a range of matters are depicted in a visual form. If you see the graphic, the Commission has issued guidelines for organizing child-friendly melas and large gatherings. It has also issued monitoring guidelines for NCPCR or State Commission of Protection of Child Rights in relation to POCSO. NCPCR has issued guidelines for eliminating corporal punishments in school. It has also issued guidelines on the abolition of child labor as well as detailed guidelines on nutrition. These are some of the matters in which the Commission has issued guidelines, and the Commission has also actively participated in a high-level discussions involving child adoption regulation, child labor and Juvenile Justice Act, POCSO Act, etc. There are many success stories relating to protection of child rights by NCPCR. If you look at the website of the NCPCR, you find many instances of kidnapping of children where the Commission's intervention has led to the restoration of the children with their parents, acid attacks on children, and many such issues where the Commission's intervention has led to a successful redressal of the grievances of the petitioners. There have been cases where the Commission also took suo motu cognizance. Now, the Commission also faces a number of challenges in its operations. For instance, you take its monitoring role under the Right to Education Act, and on average it receives over 2,000 complaints. But if you look at the disposal, in fact there was an RTI query in relation to the disposal of complaints by the NCPCR, and it found that it was in a position to dispose only 1/4 of such cases, which raises questions about its ability. It raises questions about management of its caseload. So there's a lot more that NCPCR needs to do with regard to the case management, inquiry into complaints. A few states have established state commissions for protection of child rights. NCPCR can lead advocacy in this regard, can persuade state governments, engage with the state governments and request them to establish such commissions in states where they do not exist, and also coordinate them for a collective goal, that is namely protection and promotion of child rights across the length and breadth of the country. And this is again another matter where there's a lot more action that can be that is required. Paris Principles were adopted by the UN General Assembly, and these Paris Principles relate to a wide mandate, relate to a pluralism, autonomy, independence, etc. of the national human rights institutions. These are very critical for the success of any national human rights institution, and they have been highlighted by the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action that was adopted at the end of the World Conference on Human Rights in 1993. The importance of the Paris Principles have also been highlighted by the Committee on the Rights of the Child, which monitors the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Yet, if one looks at the NCPCR and its compliance with the Paris Principle, there is a big gap. There is a Center for Child Law which is based at the National Law School of India, University, Bengaluru, which conducted a study, and it had a number of lacunae in the compliance with Paris Principles by the NCPCR. For instance, appointment of chairpersons and members. The Paris Principles require that persons from political background persons with a bureaucratic background must not be taken in the National Human Rights Institution for the sake of independence, for the sake of autonomy. Yet in the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act, there is a no ban on the recruitment of chairperson and members from a political background or from a bureaucratic background. There have been many retired bureaucrats who have been engaged by the Commission as consultants, which again is a serious malady. The whole appointment process is clouded in a non-transparent manner. The vacancies are not advertised, and it's all done in a opaque manner. Often these vacancies are not filled for months together, with the result that the Commission's ability is seriously affected. Now, let me turn to another dimension, that is, this Commission doesn't enjoy needed financial autonomy, functional autonomy. It cannot make its own rules, and it needs prior approval from the Ministry of Women and Child Development for many of the things that it needs to do. This in a way affects the Commission's fulfillment of its mandate, and if you can see the module, the static text, these have been described in great detail on how some of these lacuna severely hamper the effectiveness of NCPCR. When we see the situation of children across the country, we find that there are still challenges, say in relation to child marriages. For instance, Orissa, some time back, there was a 1600% increase in the child marriages, and if you see the number of prosecutions that were launched, they were in double digits. So there is a big gap between the practice of child marriages and the actual enforcement of laws at the ground level. Similarly, you take sexual offences against children, which are on the rise in many parts of the country. Many states have not yet established counselors in their schools. Still, these violations keep happening with such impunity. So, all these underscore the need for much more action, much more vigilance, much more advocacy by the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. We have seen a list of few actions taken by NCPCR in the terms of preparation of guidelines on certain critical matters, its intervention in certain issues, but we have also seen many lacunae which hinder, which hamper the effective functioning of NCPCR. Only time can tell whether these hurdles will be overcome by the Commission or not, and only time can tell whether the Commission will be a leader in the efforts to protect and promote child rights in the country. Thank you.